from a first-person account. It was not from a journalist. It was coming from someone observing. It was from someone saying, "This happened to me," unquote. You also heard from Richard Marks, an expert in the inner workings of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, who explained that the impact of Ms. Heard's allocations on Mr. Depp was devastating. Quote, "It's devastating. It's the type of claim, the Me Too claim of sexual violence, domestic abuse, that has canceled a list of actors," unquote. And for many, and Mr. Depp would agree with this, rightfully so, Me Too is an important movement, a movement that Mr. Depp supports and believes in.
Smart.
It's for true survivors of abuse, not Ms. Heard. True victims need protection, and true perpetrators need to face the repercussions. But as you heard in this case, Amber Heard is not a true victim, and Mr. Depp certainly is not an abuser. Again, nobody has come out of the woodwork to say, "Me Too." This is the unique and singular Me Too case where there's not a single Me Too. In fact, to the contrary, Kate Moss, who was in a romantic relationship with Mr. Depp for 3 years, which he broke off, came forward to say, no, he never pushed her down any stairs. And you heard Doug Banya, an expert in internet and social media analytics, testify to the impact that Ms. Heard's allegations had on Mr. Depp's popularity. Ms. Heard's lawyers tried to tell you that all of the damage done to Mr. Depp's career was because of his own behavior, because he was sometimes unprofessional or sometimes late to set. But that doesn't hold up. Mr. Depp has been a major figure in Hollywood for decades. Yes, Mr. Depp was late to set sometimes. But as Richard Marks testified, quote, "When you hire Johnny Depp, you get all of Johnny Depp, which includes being late," unquote. Keenan White, who has worked for decades as a sound engineer on some of Mr. Depp's films, said much the same thing. And by the way, Mr. White is not and never has been an employee of Mr. Depp. He's just worked with him on movies. Mr. Depp wasn't canceled by Hollywood because he was sometimes late to set. He was canceled because Ms. Heard falsely accused him of domestic violence and sexual violence on the pages of the Washington Post on December 18, 2018, repeating the prior lies of May 17, 2016. And as you saw at trial, Ms. Heard published the op-ed on December 18, 2018, 2 years after her public allegations of domestic abuse. Ms. Heard's publication of the op-ed coincided with the release of her major movie Aquaman that December. And it coincided as well with her announcement on Twitter that she was becoming an ACLU ambassador for women's rights. And in that op-ed, Ms. Heard repeated her false allegations against Mr. Depp. Now, she didn't mention his name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew exactly who and what Ms. Heard was talking about. Ms. Heard got on the stand and tried to tell you that the op-ed was not about Mr. Depp. She then said, well, it wasn't just about Mr. Depp. But she couldn't deny, and this was yesterday, that this was at least partly about Mr. Depp.
Look.
The op-ed obviously is about Mr. Depp, and the testimony at trial proves that. You will recall testimony from the ACLU's representative, an attorney, stating that Mr. Depp's name was included in drafts of the op-ed and that they and others understood that the op-ed was about Mr. Depp. Specifically, the ACLU representative testified, among other things, quote, "Based on my review of prior drafts of the op-ed, I knew that she was referring to Johnny Depp and the marriage," unquote. Ms. Heard's claim that the op-ed is not about Mr. Depp is just another one of her many, many lies. In fact, what you have seen time and time again through the course of this trial is that Ms. Heard lies. She lies all the time about things that are important and the things that aren't important. She just can't seem to stop. And as Ms. Vasquez said, what she routinely does is she doesn't take ownership or responsibility for anything.
True.
And she has an excuse for everything.
Massively true.
But in this courtroom,
Says you.
confronted with the evidence, she can't run away from her own words. As my colleague said, words matter, and Ms. Heard is condemned by her own words. So Tom, let's please take a look at the words she used in her op-ed, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, and which Ms. Heard published in December 2018, 2 years after she first publicly accused Mr. Depp of being an abuser on May 27, 2016. The title of the op-ed reads, as you can see, quote, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, unquote. Below that, Ms. Heard states, quote, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. And below that, Ms. Heard states, quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. Each of those statements clearly refers to Ms. Heard's allegations against Mr. Depp. And taken collectively, their message and their implication about Mr. Depp is clear, i.e. that Ms. Heard is a survivor of domestic abuse and that Mr. Depp is a perpetrator. The context in the rest of the op-ed makes that clear as well. Consider, for instance, this line, quote, imagine a powerful man is a ship, like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes, not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend upon the enterprise, unquote. Everyone in Hollywood knew, and everyone in this courtroom now knows exactly what Ms. Heard intended those words to mean. The ship, the Titanic, is Mr. Depp. And Ms. Heard was the iceberg that sank him. That's precisely what Ms. Heard was saying in the op-ed. And in just the same way, everyone in Hollywood knew, and Hollywood and elsewhere knew exactly what Ms. Heard meant by the words, quote, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, unquote. That was a clear reference to the day 2 years earlier, on May 27, 2016. And as Ms. Vasquez said, that was 6 years to the day. That's when his life ended. That was 6 years ago to this day, when Ms. Heard, on May 27, 2016, walked into court with her publicist, Jody Gottlieb, having tipped off TMZ, with an alleged mark on her face to accuse Mr. Depp of abuse. As always, Ms. Heard was quite mindful of her image. She was careful to portray herself as the innocent representative of abuse survivors, and by implication, Mr. Depp as the perpetrator of domestic abuse. She was the woman who, in the words of her
You're kidding, right?
title, supposedly, quote, spoke up against sexual violence, unquote. Now, Ms. Heard has done a lot to try to walk away from the title, in particular. That's true form. She has testified that she didn't write it, and she will argue later that she shouldn't be held liable because she didn't write it. But as the court's instructions, which you heard this morning, make clear, Ms. Heard didn't have to personally write any part of the op-ed for her to defame Mr. Depp through implication in the Washington Post. And let's please, Tom, turn to Plaintiff's Exhibit 3.
Not my internet.
Ms. Heard, as you all can see on the screen, retweeted the article, including the title on her Twitter page. Ms. Heard put her name on it. And she proudly
Bitch ass.
declared, quote, "Today I published this op-ed in the Washington Post, ellipsis,"
I see.
unquote. Her tweet includes the title with the words, quote, "I spoke up against sexual violence," unquote, prominently featured. Nowhere in this tweet or anywhere else does Ms. Heard disavow the title. To the contrary, she's proclaiming it. And at the same time, Ms. Heard posted this tweet, she posted another, which you can see right beneath it. Quote, "I'm honored to announce my role as an ACLU ambassador on women's rights," unquote, aggrandizing herself at the expense of Mr. Depp.
True.
So make no
This is good.
mistake,
This is good.
this was about Mr. Depp. In the wake of the Me Too movement, with her ACLU ambassadorship
he's,
and a major movie coming out, Ms. Heard was trading on her accusations of abuse against Mr. Depp. She was reminding everyone of those allegations. She was once again taking on the role of her lifetime, the heroic survivor of vicious abuse, or to use her phrase, quote, "a public figure representing abuse." And she was once again casting Mr. Depp as the villain in her drama, the supposed perpetrator of that abuse. When you meet to deliberate this case, you're going to be tasked with several questions. Those questions appear on a form that you will use to reach your verdict in this case. So I'd just like to ask you, please, to spend a few minutes with me going through that. Tom, would you please put up the special verdict form so the jury can see it? Some of it's hard to read, so maybe
Zoom in and go down one by one.
Tom might please blow it up.
Blow that shit up, Tom.
Oh, thank you very much. You will see here the first page of the verdict form relating to Mr. Depp's claim for defamation against Ms. Heard. There are 3 pages relating to Mr. Depp's claim, one for each of the 3 defamatory statements in the op-ed that form the basis of Mr. Depp's claim against Ms. Heard. You've heard those 3 statements many times, but they bear repeating, I promise, just once more here. 1, quote, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change," unquote. 2, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. 3, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. Now, there are 7 questions that you will need to please answer with respect to each of those statements. So that's 21 questions, I think, but 7 as to each statement. 1, was the statement made or published by Ms. Heard? 2, was the statement about Mr. Depp? 3, was the statement false? 4, did the statement have a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp? 5, was the defamatory implication designed and intended by Ms. Heard? 6, was the defamatory implication conveyed to someone other than Mr. Depp? 7, did Ms. Heard make the statement with actual malice, which is, Her Honor explained, meaning did Ms. Heard make the statement knowing it was false or with reckless disregard as to the truth?
Definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence clearly shows that the answers to those 7 questions are all yes. And if you answer yes to all of those questions, which you should, we respectfully submit, you will be asked to state the amount of damages to which Mr. Depp is entitled.
Wait, they have to write
In the wake of
amounts?
the Me Too movement, movie producers know better than to cast a movie star who has been accused of domestic and sexual violence. And it is entirely within your discretion as jurors to quantify the amount of money that constitutes fair compensation for Mr. Depp's pain and humiliation inflicted by Ms. Heard's defamation. But while Mr. Depp certainly is entitled to monetary compensation, this case, at least for Mr. Depp, has never been about money. This case for Mr. Depp has never been about money. Nor is it about punishing Ms. Heard. It is about Mr. Depp's reputation and freeing him from the prison in which he has lived for the last 6 years, and it's 6 years to the day. The most important questions for Mr. Depp, the ones truly at the heart of this case, are questions 2, 3, and 4 on the verdict form. And while Tom's pulling that up, let's take question 2. Thank you. Were the statements about Mr. Depp? Yes. 2 points here. 1, when the ACLU pitched the op-ed to the Washington Post, I think you'll remember this, they pitched it as, quote, a piece by Amber Heard, who, as you know, was beaten up during her brief marriage to Johnny Depp, unquote. That's how they pitched it. 2, after the op-ed was published, news outlets, including USA Today, and you've seen that was an exhibit, characterized the op-ed as referring to Ms. Heard's allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp. So the USA Today interpreted it that way, and so did many other publications. They got exactly the implication that Ms. Heard and the ACLU intended them to have. Tom, if you would please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 409 and 411, if you could put them side by side. And this was expected. This is what they wanted. There had been a lot of press 2 years prior to the publication of the op-ed about Ms. Heard's claims of abuse against Mr. Depp when she walked into court with her publicist to obtain the domestic violence, the no-notice ex parte, meaning Mr. Depp's lawyer was not informed and he was already in New York, which he testified Ms. Heard was well aware of. You don't need a domestic violence restraining order when your husband is halfway across the continent and is heading for a European tour. On May 27, 2016, with a purported mark on her face, everyone knew exactly who and what Ms. Heard was referring to in the op-ed. She was referring to Mr. Depp. Let's take questions 2 and 3 next, if we can. Were each of the statements false? And did the statements have a defamatory implication on Mr. Depp? Again, the clear answer is yes. The statements, understood in the context of the op-ed itself and in the broader context of the press coverage of Ms. Heard walking into the court with a mark on her face to obtain a domestic violence restraining order against Mr. Depp in May 2016, clearly imply that Mr. Depp physically and sexually abused Ms. Heard. The overwhelming evidence that you all have heard, and it's come forward in this case, shows that those allegations are false and despicably false. Mr. Depp did not physically abuse Ms. Heard. He did not sexually abuse Ms. Heard. You've heard audio after audio where Ms. Heard admits that she was physically abusing him. While Mr. Depp's name will be forever tarnished by these horrendous and false allegations, this case is about telling you his story and the truth about what really happened, which you've now heard. It is about restoring his lost reputation. It's about showing Mr. Depp's children, Lily Rose and Jack, that the truth is worth fighting for. It is. And it's about restoring Mr. Depp's name and standing in the community to the fullest extent that you can. And you can do something.
Holy.
And only you, ladies and gentlemen, can do that for him. You heard from Mr. Depp yesterday that he has been carrying these outlandish, outrageous stories on his back, pretty stoically, and living with them for 6 years, and waiting to be able to bring his truth out. And he has told you the truth, the unvarnished truth, even truth that pretty embarrassing. He knew that was going to happen when he brought this case. You've seen the evidence in this case over 6 long weeks, which we again thank you for. That evidence shows overwhelmingly that Ms. Heard's attempt to paint herself as a heroic survivor, an innocent survivor, and Mr. Depp as a terrifying abuser are utterly false. We ask you to please return your verdict for Mr. Depp. We ask you, we implore you to give him his name, his reputation, and his career back. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a break at this time. Again, this case has not been submitted to you yet. We will continue with closing arguments when we come back, so do not discuss the case with yourselves. Don't do any outside research, okay?
Jesus. You had a rare mini ult. I saw that. I heard it. Rare. Actually rare.
All right, let's come back at 11:05. Oh, okay. Okay, sure.
What's going on with Mr. Depp's suit right there, man? What is that? Is that drip? Seems a little long, man. No? Is that drippy drip? Oh no, this is my juice release. Now my room is hot. It's hot in here, boys. Nah, they did pretty good. I think so. I think it was interesting because the first one was more like emotional and about like the you know, the story or whatever, and abuse, but that's not what the case is about, right? It's about defamation, right? Which indirectly it is about abuse, but still. But they have to close the gap, right? In between that and defamation. And I was wondering how they were gonna do it, but they actually built into it pretty smart. That was a pretty smart build up. How they bridged to it with like the story of him as a child and how he grew up a certain way and then he built something and then when it was to get there, that can take years or a lifetime to build, but can take a second to destroy. I think that was pretty smart. And then boom. Obviously, I don't know what they're doing, but I think it was interesting to see how they were gonna do it. It was interesting, because it's bound to be a little rocky, right? Because it's a defamation case to do from all the stories or whatever to the more business side of like all lost opportunities and lost money and lost the financials or whatever, right? Because one is a little bit more like emotional and hot, and one is a little bit like more cold and more, you know. That was good though. I enjoyed it. Howen? Well, it's still not, like people didn't agree with me earlier. People got mauled in the chat when I said it. He actually might win, and you're like, might? Question mark? Yeah, it's might. Like, look at all the things that have to line up. Look at all the things that have to line up, back to back, for this to go through, for him to win. Everybody knew that even if in a landslide case with all the events lined up, it would be an uphill battle. Everybody knows this shit. It's not like some trade secret that it is. And always would be an uphill battle. And even when all the evidence went like this, it still is, dude. Him losing doesn't mean that she wins. That's not what that means. that they can both win, they can both lose. One can win, one can lose. There's multiple outcomes here. Stop saying question mark because you don't understand the concept. Like I'm stupid. Yes, they can both win, both lose, one win, one lose. Yes, that's how it works. Yes. What? If Amber win, Johnny can't win. That doesn't mean that he loses though. Well, it is, yeah, it's a kind of claim, yeah, okay, yeah. It does, but still. How many outcomes, how many possible outcomes are there? 6? 5? 5, 6? How many? I said that like 2 weeks ago, that I think that he already won. Because if he goes to, dude, Cap, earlier I said, oh, it's not about money. And maybe people said, dude, Cap, it is about money, huh? Dude, you don't get it. He doesn't need to win the court case to win. Okay? Them showing up in court and them turning the stones, okay, is a win for him. Literally, he didn't fully restore the reputation, right? But at least they didn't go out blazing, guns blazing, with footage of her fucking slamming or whatever, or like some crazy shit. What they had was a shaky at best, and them being put on the spot that they had to show it and prove it. Yeah, that's a win for him. Literally, that is a automatic win for him. Who cares what the result is? How is that a question mark? Why is that so fucking dumb? What is wrong with this chat, man? How is that a question mark? If you take two people and you do a race, who can make the most money in a month? And then they both get it. They both go hunting for jobs, right? And the prize of the competition is $1,000 or $10,000, and one guy lands a job for $500K a year out of the blue because boom, right? And let's say he loses, he still wins. Who cares what the final outcome is? It's gonna be like the journey. The prize here isn't the prize that Depp is going for. I don't know how people. This is not even like something complicated. This is like a simple thing. Everybody knows this shit. What's on to, man? It's just a reputation. I mean, it's not only about rep either. Lose, fight, win, war. I mean, he might actually win the war as well, though. I mean, the way that they dissected what they had to do to win it with the jury form, I could see it. Not actually that the nothing win inbound. 75% win, I think. Fuck it. That's my call. Boom. He's a scumbag, is what it is. Huh? Who's a scumbag? Fuck you talking about? Yeah, this guy is a weirdo. I just look at his logs. Yeah, this guy's the actual degenerate. We're not gonna have predictions because they will not be deliberating today. That does not happen very often. That does not happen very often. That they deliberate, boom, instantaneously, and it ends in one tap. That's not. I don't want to use arrows there. Oh, that's big. Oh, that was big. Oh, that was big. The arrows were fine. What was wrong with the arrows there? Wait, it activates the king? I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's how the game worked. Wait, what? It activates the king. What? Oh, we can't go for arrows here, there's no point. He's gonna do skeletons here. I need to be ready for it. GG. Damn, that was a good counter. Dude, fuck off! I fucked that up so badly. You ready? You ready? I lost. The way this guy plays the game, I think, is the most despicable, dog shit, boring fucking gameplay you can ever find in a player. Actually fucking disgusting. It is despicable. It is unfathomable. It is unapologetable. What? That was a good play there, what? That was a great play.
Love you, Dad. xQcL.
Oh my god, I lost that as well, I think. I think I fucking lost this game again, dude. Are you kidding me? Wait, this guy's full. This guy's pay to win. Wait, this guy's a massive pay to win. He's gonna do another witch right here, and it's gonna fuck me over. Level 14. What? It killed my prince. What the fuck? Got him. Got him. GG. GG, get fucked on. He's just got obliterated. I just absolutely fucking rolled him. Guys, that guy was pay to win. Look, let me show you proof. Okay, fuck. Come on, give me a crit, give me a crit, give me a crit, give me a crit. Oh my god, this fucker. This guy pay to win. Look at his level. Massive pay to win. Massive pay to win. He's level 12! Oh my god, pay to win Andy! Pay to win Andy! Pay to win Andy!
I'm finna drown from all that drip you got RNX such a W shirt, not gonna cap.
Man, this pay to win Andy. He's so high leveled. Pay to win Andy! Oh, that was massive. Oh, that's massive. Oh, that's massive. Wait a minute.
Today's chat's birthday. Happy birthday, chat. Smile. Hi Mr. Cow, or should I say xQc. Thank you for all the laughs through these years of juicing, and I hope for more to come. xQcOW.
Boom! Boom! I can barely breathe. My heart's racing. What the fuck? That was fucking massive. Look at this guy. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Level 12. 12, 12, 13. Oh my god. Oh my god. Pay to win Andy. Pay to, I just completely obliterated this fucker. Come on, man. Don't be weird like that. Bad surround, that really bad surround.
Hello Mr. Cow, did you know verified accounts only chat has been on since last night? -5 for the silent juicers.
Wait, really?
You hurrah.
Wait, mods, do we actually have that? What was that? Why did I just do that? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I don't get it. Oh, he's better when I didn't notice. No. No.
Mr. Cow, can you please host a tournament? It's very little gem to host and you can spectate games from your community. It's a win-win.
Pay to win. No. Look at him, 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 look at him. Look at this guy, look at him. Look at him. I mean, what is this? 14, 13, 13. Like, how do you even beat that? Look at me. 10, 11, 12. I can't beat that. I literally cannot beat that. It's impossible. All you do is pay money. That's all they do is just pay money. So lame. So lame. So lame. I'm happy to win if all these troops are one level on average better than mine.
Of course everyone is paid to win. Motherfucker, you literally pay to lose. LLLLLLLLLLLLLL.
Ha! That was true, dude. Law, dude. Haha, dude. The same joke back to back. Ha, dude. Got him, dude. Got him, dude. So annoying. Like, who plays this way?
Are we ready for the jury?
Alright, ready. Let's get
Okay.
this shit going.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, closing arguments. Mr. Rottenborg?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Mr. Rottenborg, is your mic on?
I believe it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Let's get it.
Does that work? Okay. In trying to convince you that Mr. Death has carried his burden of proof in proving that he was never abusive to Amber on even one occasion, think about the message that Mr. Death and his attorneys are sending to Amber, and by extension to every victim of domestic abuse.
Wait a minute.
If you didn't take pictures, it didn't happen. If you did take pictures, they're fake. If you didn't tell your friends, you're lying.
If the only pictures you have are fake,
If you
what else are you
did
gonna
tell
say?
your friends, they're part of the hoax. If you didn't seek medical treatment, you weren't injured. If you did seek medical treatment, you're crazy. If you do everything that you can to help your spouse, the person that you love, rid himself of the crushing drug and alcohol abuse that spins him into an abusive, rage-filled monster, you're a nag. And if you finally decide that enough is enough, you've had enough of the fear, enough of the pain, and you have to leave to save yourself, you're a gold digger. That is the message that Mr. Death is asking you.
I think he showed up to the wrong courtroom
He
today.
doesn't stop
Literally.
there. Because in Mr. Depp's world, you don't leave Mr. Depp. And if you do, he will start a campaign of global humiliation against you. A smear campaign that lasts to this very day. He will do everything he can to destroy your life, to destroy your career. That is what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what they're trying to get you, the jury, to be an accomplice to. But it's not surprising, because Mr. Depp cannot and will not take responsibility for his own actions. It's always someone else's fault. Just as Ms. Vasquez did, and Mr. Chu did,
Wait, what?
I would like to extend my thanks to you on behalf of Amber and our whole legal team for the care and the diligence with which you have served as jurors in this matter. You've paid attention to every witness,
If you
every
can't,
piece of evidence, and I can't even imagine the sacrifice
Why didn't he
that
start
you've
with
made
this?
in terms of time away from your friends, your family, your
Wait,
job.
why
to
would
be
you
here
start
on
with
this
that?
jury. It's a very important role that you're serving, and we thank you very much. Let's pick up where we started 6 weeks ago in opening statement. You may remember that I asked you to keep a simple question in mind, which is, why are you here? And much of what you've heard during the course of this trial, you don't need to make a decision on in order to return a verdict for Ms. Heard on Mr. Depp's claim of defamation.
2 years
Now,
gone
we'll
south.
talk about Ms. Heard's claim of defamation against Mr. Depp, and Elaine will address most of that in a few minutes.
Ooh.
But your key question to answer is, does the First Amendment give Ms. Heard the right to write the words that she wrote in this article on December 18th, 2018? That's the question. And you cannot simultaneously protect and uphold the First Amendment and find in favor of Johnny Depp on his claim. You simply cannot. You have to decide, should someone be able to write an article like that in the United States of America without being sued successfully, without having to go through the hell that Ms. Heard has gone through? So let's talk about that. And to do that, we get to explain a bit more about the law that you have to follow. This is the op-ed piece. I'm not going to read it to you again. You heard me read it to you in opening statements. And I would urge you, when you're in the deliberation room, read it. Read it again. And I know we focused on it, here and there over the course of the trial, but the vast majority of this trial has not focused on these words, on this piece. This is obviously the paper edition. There's the online edition as well. Now we get a chance to discuss with you exactly what you have to find about this article. Let's try this again. This is one of the jury instructions that you'll get. And I've been so looking forward to being able to actually explain to you, as the judge read all the instructions to you this morning, and I know it was a lot, but we've been looking forward to being able to explain to you what you're here to decide. Because I imagine for some of the case, it's been kind of unclear. What are you being asked to decide? These are the things that you have to find, and you have to answer yes. As Mr. Chu said, you have to answer yes to all of them in order to find in favor of Mr. Depp. So you have to find that the statement was about Mr. Depp. And you can decide that in the context of the article. And I'll get to the arguments that Mr. Depp raises on that in a minute. You also have to find that the statement is false. And we're going to look at the statements here. We're going to look at each of the three statements. And in order to win his claim, Mr. Depp has to prove every single element. And there's a concept in the jury instructions that you really didn't hear from Mr. Depp's side this morning, but you've all heard it, I'm sure, outside the courtroom, which is burden of proof. It is Mr. Depp's burden to prove each and every one of these elements. If he cannot, Ms. Heard wins. If he cannot prove each and every one of these elements under the burden of proof that's applicable, Ms. Heard wins. And there's two different burdens of proof that we'll get to. For all of them except number 7, the burden of proof is
They're coming out
greater
as
weight
so
of the
cold
evidence.
and
So you
goal-oriented.
weigh the evidence and you decide, has Mr. Depp proven to you the first 6 elements?
Which is what they want, but not to come
Seventh
across
one,
as.
for actual malice, the clear and convincing evidence standard, we'll get to in a few minutes. But this is what he has to prove. And he cannot do that.
What? It's true.
These are the 3 statements. And I know you may be thinking to yourself, wait a second, don't we have to decide if Mr. Depp committed abuse? And the answer is no, you don't have to. Because these 3 statements, you can decide as a matter of law, or as a matter of fact, as you weigh
can't
the
read
evidence
it.
and the facts, that they're true. So the first 2 statements I'm going to address together. Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Number two, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. When you go back to the jury room to deliberate, you should feel free, like I said, to read the article and think of the article's purpose. The jury instructions also tell you to take these statements in the context of the article. Think about the purpose. The purpose of the article was to promote legislative measures designed to protect victims of domestic abuse, designed to protect people who did exactly what Ms. Heard did, to speak out. That's apparent on the face of the article.
Instead,
and to do that,
she wished that
Ms. Heard talked about
she was
her own
protected
life
as an abuser.
experiences as someone who had obtained a TRO against Mr. Depp, someone who had accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence. Make no mistake, and Mr. Depp's side keeps trying to say that we're somehow suggesting that 2 years before she wrote this, that Ms. Heard hadn't had anything to do with Mr. Depp. We're not saying that. You heard Ms. Heard herself say, of course, 2 years before I wrote this article, I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out after she obtained a temporary restraining order against Mr. Depp, after she became a public figure representing domestic abuse. But the words that she wrote here,
What?
and then chronicling her own experience after that, those words are true. Those words are true. Similarly, the rare vantage point of seeing, based on her own experiences post May 27th, 2016, how institutions protect men accused of abuse, those words are true, and the First Amendment protects Ms. Heard's right to say them. Now, the third statement is absolutely true as well, but we're going to take that separately because she didn't write it. Under the First Amendment, the statements have to be false in order for Mr. Depp to win. Now, plaintiff addresses, like I said, an argument that we're not making. And as I said, we're not running from the fact that when she discussed becoming a public figure representing domestic abuse, Amber was speaking of her experiences reporting domestic abuse against Johnny Depp. She admitted to that, but that doesn't make the article or the statements about Johnny Depp. Think about it. Think about every piece of evidence that you've heard over the last 6 weeks about his abuse, about their relationship. None of that is in the article. None of it. We all know that it would be a very different article if she had written about what she suffered, that she's told you about over the last 6 weeks. Because he knows the words are true, Mr. Depp says that the words now have a defamatory implication. He says the statements are the same as saying, Johnny Depp abused me. But just because he wants to make the article about himself doesn't mean it is. He has to show you that any defamatory implication was designed and intended. Look at number 4. Designed and intended by Ms. Heard to convey the defamatory meaning that he suggests. Just because people might read the article and remember, oh yeah, Amber Heard used to be married to Johnny Depp, and she accused him of abuse. Wow. That doesn't mean that she designed and intended defamatory implications in writing about herself. And think about it. If Mr. Depp is right, then virtually any statement that anyone could ever make about their own life that implies anything, implies any involvement with any other person, could be defamatory. And that's clearly not what the First Amendment intends.
Guys, it's really hard to
she
prove
didn't
that, though.
design and intend the words to be the equivalent of writing Johnny Depp abused me.
Yes, proving
You don't have to
intention
take her
is very
words
difficult.
for it. You can take the words of Terrence Doherty of the ACLU. He said that the op-ed wasn't even Ms. Heard's idea. The ACLU wrote the first draft, and great care was taken in drafting the article so as not to make it about Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard's relationship with him. That's the only evidence presented about Ms. Heard's motive, except her statements that was exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to talk about her experiences after Johnny Depp. She wanted to own her story after Johnny Depp and fit those into what other women experience, what other people experience having accused someone of domestic abuse and the backlash that they suffer, and then talk about legislative measures that could help protect people in those positions. That's what she meant, and that's what the article is about. There's no hidden meaning here, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't a hit piece on Johnny Depp. This isn't a hit piece on Johnny Depp.
Wait, what?
And you can end here. You can end there by saying the statements that she wrote
I told you,
were
home
not
run.
false, and the First Amendment.
That's what I said. Home run.
Let's talk about
You shouldn't end it at line 1 or line 2.
The headline that was published
The rest
in
is
the
irrelevant
online version
because the first
only
ones
of the
can't be
article,
proved.
December
Boom.
18th, 2018, said, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. few points here. Number one, and this evidence is undisputed. There's no dispute about this. So as you weigh the evidence, you don't have to check your common sense at the door, and you can weigh circumstantial evidence, you can weigh facts, but you can't see evidence where no evidence exists. And the undisputed evidence here is that Ms. Heard didn't write the headline, she didn't approve the headline, she had nothing to do with it, she was not given notice of the headline. She testified, you saw her testify about the sexual assault that she experienced at the hands of Mr. Depp. You saw her testify about that they're calling her a liar. You saw her on the stand testify with your own mouth, with her own mouth, exactly what she went through for the first time in court, because people who have suffered that, they don't want to broadcast that to the world.
Degree from online
They
law
want to penalize Ms. Heard for not
Samoa.
speaking about that earlier. That's ridiculous, and it's insulting, and it's just victim blaming at its most disgusting. The only reference to sexual assault in the article, and you can read the op-ed, is sexual assault that she said she had experienced by the time she was of college age, before Mr. Depp. So there is a reference to sexual violence in that article, but it's not by Mr. Depp. And Mr. Depp can't hold her liable for a headline she didn't write, that contained something that had nothing, that was not about him.
Ooh.
And they want you to think that she republished the headline by tweeting out the link to the online version. So let's look at this.
That was pretty bad.
This is the
that
tweet
was pretty
that she
fucking
sent
bad.
on December 19th. The hyperlink says, opinion, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence. That's the online version of the article. As Ms. Heard said, you can't tweet a piece of paper. So when she wanted to share that she had written this article,
has nothing
what
to do with
choice
him.
does she have?
Then he caught himself.
She has to attach that link.
And reel back a little bit because he knows it's about him.
You have make clear that a hyperlink is not republication. Forwarding a link on does not mean that you broadcast the statement again, but that's what they want to make you think. The only way, and the jury instructions that you have, and we don't need to read through them in detail now, but the republication instruction says that merely linking to an article does not amount to republication, but adding content to a linked article may constitute republication. You must determine whether any added content was intended to reach a new audience, and if you find any content added to the hyperlink was intended to reach a new audience, it constitutes a republication. There was no content added to the article.
That's semantics.
She tweeted above the article simply saying, today I published this. That's what she said. She didn't add any content to it. She could have added some of the content that you've heard in this courtroom to it. She could have said, not only did 2 years ago I become a public figure representing domestic abuse, but let me tell you about the domestic abuse that I suffered. That would be adding new content. This is not adding new content. But I guess it's no surprise, because this whole case is about blaming Amber Heard for things she didn't do. But that's what Mr. Depp does. It's what he's always done. Blame other people, refuse to take accountability. But the problem for him here is that he's running headlong into the United States Constitution, which says that you cannot hold Amber Heard liable for words she didn't write or publish. But here we are. Here we are. And you can decide this case without ever wading into any of the allegations.
What a weird offload of blame.
Facts,
That's
the
so
evidence
weird.
that you've heard about the heinous abuse that Ms. Heard suffered at the hands of Mr. Depp. You can decide that by
Then,
determining that
in
those
that regard,
statements
the woman
are
statement
true
then
and they're protected
are
by
the
the First
same for
Amendment.
Johnny then, with that logic, right?
But Mr. Depp brought this case, and he's suggesting that he was never abused.
Because he didn't write them.
Heard. So if that's where you want to make your decision, that's where the road ends for Mr. Depp. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. If Amber was abused by Mr. Depp even one time, then she wins. One time. And we're not just talking about physical abuse. We're talking about emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. That's what we're talking about. Let's look at the evidence. You heard Mr. Depp define abuse from his own mouth. He admitted all of that when he talked about his childhood. As they referenced, his mother called him one-eyed because he had a lazy eye. And he said that that was worse than the beatings that he took. worse than the beatings that he took. Being called one-eye by his mother was worse than the beatings that he took. And after the evidence that you've seen, some of which you're going to see, I want you to think to yourself, is being called one-eye worse than what he did to Miss Heard? Absolutely not.
It's a child.
You'll remember his expert, Shannon Curry, agreed with all that.
It's
that
a
abuse
child.
can take many forms. And you'll remember that Don Hughes, Miss Heard's expert, talked about the reports of intimate partner violence by Miss Heard, characterized by physical violence, psychological aggression, sexual violence, coercive control, and surveillance behaviors. She tested Miss Heard. She said that the tests show that there's a high degree of serious violence perpetrated by Mr. Depp toward Miss Heard.
How would
She
these?
got that opinion and that impression by reviewing the medical records
This
of
would have
Miss
to be
Heard.
a.
She talked about the role of coercive control that Mr. Depp exercised over Miss Heard. The effect of coercive control, she said, was drastic, and it was composed of things such as possessive jealousy, the imbalance of power,
Now
not
prove
only in
that it was
physical
about her.
stature and physical size, but in where they were in their life and their career, by intimidation. She said writing obscene messages to your partner can absolutely be intimidating behavior. She said that Mr. Depp, after reviewing the evidence, banging and throwing and hitting things in the household, that's psychological aggression. Punching a wall, throwing something, screaming, that is abuse. That's abuse, ladies and gentlemen. She said alcohol can just throw lighter fluid off a flame in a situation of domestic violence. All of these things constitute the domestic violence that Miss Heard suffered at the hands of Mr. Depp. And he's trying to get you, to fool you, to believing that he's carried his burden of proof that never a single time in their relationship was he in any way, physically or non-physically, abusive to Miss Heard.
Is you're presenting the
That's
fucking
ridiculous.
cabinets now? What the fuck is
ridiculous.
happening?
So let's look at some of that evidence. And like I said, you can apply your own common sense. You don't need to check that at the door when you go into the deliberation room. I'm going to walk you through the evidence, some of the evidence that's been presented, including evidence from Mr. Depp's own mouth, his own words, or the words of his witnesses. Keep in mind the burden of proof. And as we go through this evidence, I'd ask you to keep this in mind as well. It's not about who's the better spouse. It's not about whether you think Miss Heard may have been abusive to Mr. Depp. It's not. Because remember, if you think that they were both abusive to each other, and that's what their witness Laurel Anderson testified to, then Amber wins. They're trying to trick you into thinking that Amber has to be perfect in order to win, even while they're ignoring Mr. Depp's many flaws. But don't fall for that trick. Amber's not perfect. None of us are. She's never pretended to be, and that's not what you're being asked to decide. One time, ladies and gentlemen, one time. If he abused her one time, Amber wins. Actually, if he fails to prove that he never abused her one time, Amber wins. So let's take a look at some of the evidence. This was one of the first messages shown to Mr. Depp
That's not how it
in
works.
his cross-examination. This is a message to Paul Bettany, his drug buddy, early on in their relationship, when he says, "Let's burn Amber. Let's drown her before we burn her. I will fuck her burnt corpse afterwards to make sure she is dead."
That's not even true, though.
Disgusting language that you could ever imagine. That is what he said to her at the beginning of the relationship. So let's look at how the relationship was bookended. You remembered Mr. Depp the other day in response to some text that we'll see later saying, "I don't write like that."
There's multiple statements. Multiple ones.
This is a bookend of the relationship.
They're all
This is after it was
defamating it.
over.
One that is wrong.
I asked
Doesn't mean
Mr.
that
Depp to
case
read
is
that
GG.
top text. You'll remember that was the only thing I asked him to read, and he immediately said I didn't write that text, even though, of course he did. Even though he wrote the text under it that said, "Hopefully
If
that
any of them
cunt's
are
rotten
defamating,
corpse
it
is
still went-
decomposing in the fucking trunk of a Honda Civic." That's how he bookended their relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, these words are a window into the heart and mind of America's favorite pirate. This is the real Johnny Depp. This is the real Johnny Depp after Miss Heard decided that she couldn't take it anymore, decided that she needed to leave him. And I'm not going to reread this whole text to you. But this is where he says she's begging for global humiliation, and she's going to get it. He says, "I'll stop at nothing, and I can only hope that karma kicks in and
she
takes
did
the
it.
breath from her."
Well, that was
One of the only
proven to be
promises
correct.
to Ms. Heard that Mr. Depp has ever kept. That's how he ended the relationship, but you saw how he started it. Now, Ms. Heard did testify on the stand that Mr. Depp abused her countless times. First it started, they were very happy. They started dating in 2011, and things were good. And she testified that even during periods of abuse, even during their relationship, when there was abuse occurring, that there were periods where they were very happy. It's the cycle of violence. It's the cycle of sobriety. There were periods when everything was good, when the monster was gone, and then the monster would return. You heard about how the first incidents of violence took place in 2012, when Ms. Heard asked Johnny about his tattoo that used to say Winona forever and had been changed to say Wino forever. And she laughed. And she said, and he slapped me across the face. She thought it was a joke, and then he did it 2 more times. And then he said, I thought I put the monster away, and I've done it before.
That could mean anything.
That's what he said to her during that first incidence of violence.
That could literally mean anything.
But you don't just have to take what Mr. Depp said in his text. We can hear through his own voice what he called Ms. Heard.
How did,
Because you're a fucking cunt!
okay.
We talked about the monster. You heard Mr. Depp get on the stand and say that that was Ms. Heard's term. She made it up.
This is what chat is
That was
wrong
what she
about
used
earlier. This right
to
there
refer to
would
him when
be
she was nagging him.
black on
She
white
didn't want him to have a
abuse.
good time. She didn't want him to have a beer once in a while.
So then you would lose right here then. Boom, done.
But no, this was a term
According to
created by
you.
Mr. Depp that she heard for the first time in 2012 after he slapped her 3 times across the face.
Words of
and said, I
abuse,
thought I
yes.
put the monster away.
And as old as
And
abuse.
after he
Yep.
sat up here on the stand under oath and told you that she made that term up, we look back at his texts, the writing at the time. The first text is after Australia in 2015, during a period of sobriety, a short-lived period of recovery for Mr. Depp, when he told Jerry
Did what?
Judge, his bodyguard,
You want to get
"All
at
I
me
have
about
to do is
semantics?
send the monster
That's
away and
semantics.
lock him up." Remember, he texted Elton John, or sent an email to Elton John in 2012, referring to himself as the monster. He tells Dr. Kipper, the doctor to whom he's paid millions and millions and millions of dollars, "Thank you, my darling Kipper." He says, "I've locked my monster child away in a cage deep within." He tells Stephen Duders, you know Mr. Duders, he liked to text Mr. Duders. He tells him, "She thinks my Peruvian period," which is a reference to cocaine, he admitted to that means him using cocaine, "has made me a monster and that I am ruining the relationship." Imagine that, someone actually thinking that maybe the impact of alcohol and cocaine is ruining a relationship. How dare she? He says, "Need to discuss the news helicopters. The monster, I want to shoot a motherfucker, but don't worry, the monster is not involved." Mr. Depp knows that he can turn into a monster. He knows that. He knows that. He got up here on the stand and tried to deny that to you.
None of these are
Talk about
demonstrative
lack accountability.
of what that is, though. None of these are
Let's see the monster.
of concrete actions
Let's
or
see the
whatever.
monster in the flesh.
And how do you know this is the monster? How do you relate the one to the other? How do you correlate them? Oh no, the cabinets.
What happened?
The countertops, no.
What happened?
Oh no, please, not the cabinets again. No.
Nothing happened this morning, you know that?
Were you in here?
No.
So then nothing happened to you this morning.
Yeah, you're right. I just woke up and you were so sweet and nice. We were not even fighting this morning. All I did was say sorry.
Literally
Did
instigating to
something
get into...
happen to you this morning? I don't think so.
Literally instigating from this is something on camera. I think that's just disgusting.
No,
Sorry.
that's the thing.
You wanna see crazy? I'll give you fucking crazy. That's crazy. Oh, you're crazy.
My significant other is having a rough time, and they're acting out on their own. I'm gonna film them
Really?
and instigate them.
See that shit on me?
No.
How is she instigating?
You were smashing shit.
Bye.
Because I think it's the problem isn't about her.
Do you see Miss Heard laughing in that?
Even she says, not even having this morning yet.
Mr. Depp in this courtroom right now is laughing and making snide remarks as that video is being played. But it's not a laughing matter. Who does that? Who does that? Imagine being in Amber's shoes on February 10th, 2016, videotaping him because when he's sober and sweet, you've never loved anything more. But when he mixes the drugs and he mixes drinks, he turns into this man. You've seen it before.
That's instigating.
You're praying
Sorry.
it won't happen again, but deep down you know it will. You know that that man will come out. You know that monster will come out, and you want him to change. Imagine watching your husband, the person you love, behaving violently that way, like a wild animal. That is abuse. That's abuse. And you don't have to look at that incident in isolation to find that it's abuse. You can look at it in the context of their whole relationship. This isn't about breaking down a series of individual days that you've heard evidence about. This is about the cumulative effect of Mr. Depp and Miss Heard's relationship and whether that constitutes abuse. That is abuse, ladies and gentlemen. That's domestic abuse. And their response is, she sold it to TMZ, which she didn't. There's no evidence of. And she was on a plane. The only evidence suggests she was on an international flight when Mr. Tremaine testified that they received it and it was validated within
Mourning
something like 15
equals
minutes,
abuse.
which could only have happened by the person
You heard it
who
here
sent
first.
Miss Heard was in the air. She didn't send it to TMZ. She never leaked anything to TMZ, as you heard from her own mouth. Who would want that to become public? Again, in order to find for Mr. Depp, you would have to find that for his defamation claim, every single
Planes
thing
will have
that
internet.
ever happened between
Nope.
them that could constitute
According-
abuse, Amber was the abuse.
This guy lives in
Every
1976.
single time. You have to believe the unbelievable. You all are smarter than that. But Mr. Depp thought he could hide it. He thought he could hide the monster. That's why he lied in insurance forms that you have to fill out in order to be able to act. That's why he said he hadn't taken illegal substances, whether prescribed by a physician or not. That obviously wasn't true within the past 12 months.
When you mourn, you break shit. Don't
They keep talking about Mr. Depp's
get upset how people mourn. Why people were upset. What the fuck are you talking about?
role as
People
a
deal with
father.
losses in
This is what he
a
sent.
million of ways.
A text that he sent DX207. Now Lily Rose, his daughter, hates me because she thinks I'm drinking, and she's right, but I can't admit, or I fucking die in her eyes. Thanks for that one, Vanessa. This is Mr. Depp passed out in a Tokyo hotel room during the press tour for The Lone Ranger in 2013. When Miss Heard testified that Mr. Depp screamed at me, and all I could think were the kids are in an adjoining room. And Mr. Depp passed out with his head like this. I don't think he was sleeping on the floor because he had a bad back. They keep referring to these pictures as, she took pictures of Mr. Depp
He's
while
in
he was
fetal
asleep.
position. Like,
He's not asleep in that picture. He's passed out, drunk, and high, and she's taking pictures because she wants him to realize what he's done and get help and seek help.
Jesus Christ. I would have not chosen that picture
I don't
of
think
all
that
the
looks
other
like
ones.
the spice cabinet of anyone in this courtroom. That's Mr. Depp. This is Mr. Depp. This is Mr. Depp. This is Mr. Depp.
So abusive.
And all you hear from Mr. Depp when these pictures are shown is snickering and defiance. Victim blaming, blaming Miss Heard
Snickering?
for taking this picture up, and for trying to
The
help.
only snickering we saw was the one when she filmed them a minute ago.
So let's talk about some of these instances of abuse. Oh, forgot one. In March 2013, talked about the Wino Forever tattoo. In March 2013, there were a couple instances. There was one where on March 8th, and we'll get to that in a second, where he was drinking brown liquor and doing a lot of cocaine. Or that might have been that was March 22nd.
Oh.
On March 8th, this is when Mr. Depp backhanded her. She felt like her lip went into her teeth and got a little blood on the wall. He grabbed her by the arm and held her on the floor, screaming at her.
I can see that. I can see that.
I'll come back to this in a minute.
Boom, proof right there. Now he's right. That was good proof right there. The man asleep.
This
Yeah.
is March 22nd.
Checkmate.
This is what Mr. Depp said isn't every hour happy hour. Again, totally abandoning any responsibility for behavior like this. But what happened on March 22nd is he wanted Miss Heard to remove a painting by her ex-partner, and he wanted to admit to an affair that she wasn't having. She didn't admit to it because it wasn't true, so he decided to have some lines of cocaine and some whiskey for breakfast. And then, on the way to filming the Keith Richards documentary, after a multi-hour argument, he
This is a
grabbed
setup, I'm sure. Literally a setup.
their dog, their teacup Yorkie, and holds the dog, Boo, out of the window.
This is
of the
literally
moving car.
a setup.
And he's howling like an animal, Miss Heard said, while holding the dog out of the car. That is abuse, ladies and gentlemen.
The drink is full.
That's
the lines are all
abuse.
there. None of it is snorted, and none of it is anything. It's all intact.
Let's go back to this, because Ms. Vasquez read a parade of witnesses that she believes support
If you
Johnny's
snorted or drank, you would
defense in this case.
think there'd be something
But
missing.
as you've seen over the course of this proceeding, these witnesses, as I previewed in the opening, almost all of them are witnesses on his payroll. They're all scared to say anything bad about him, and they've seen what happens to people who do. And none were there for the instances of domestic violence. What they're saying is, oh, if he didn't abuse Miss Heard in front of his 4 bodyguards, then it must have never happened. That's essentially what they're asking you to believe. That's ridiculous. That's not the way domestic violence works. Take his sister, Christy. I know it seems like a year ago, but she was the first witness in this case. You'll remember her on the stand when I presented her with these texts that say, stop drinking, stop coke, and stop pills. You'll remember her squirming and saying, oh, I don't think I was asking him to stop drinking, stop coke, stop pills. She couldn't even answer that basic question because she wanted to lie for Mr. Depp and say that Miss Heard was delusional. She couldn't even admit this to you. She's nothing but an enabler. The same with Sean Bett, his head of security, who's been sitting in this courtroom for the past 6 weeks. He's right there. Mr. Bett was the one who testified to you that when Mr. Depp has a few drinks of alcohol, he said, I wrote this down, he said it's like the rest of us drinking sparkling water. I don't think that kitchen video that we just saw was like you or I when we drink sparkling water. This is the same Sean Bett who said that on the evening of May 21st, 2016, which Elaine will talk about in a little bit, he said Mr. Depp may have bumped something off a table. You've seen the pictures. You'll see him again. Just like Travis McGivern said that Mr. Depp rearranged Miss Heard's closet. You've seen the pictures. You'll see him again. Just like Tara Roberts in the Bahamas, who tried to blame everything on Miss Heard and only under cross-examination admitted that Mr. Depp passed out face down in the sand underneath a hammock and his son Jack found him there. She took a video of their cabin in the Bahamas to try to suggest to you that this assault that Miss Heard alleges couldn't have taken place. But conveniently, she didn't take the camera into the closet where Mr. Depp held Miss Heard, hit her. We'll get to that incident. She didn't take the video camera into the bathroom where he sexually assaulted Miss Heard. She didn't do that because she wanted to generate evidence only favorable to Mr. Depp. Think about Sean Bett and Starling Jenkins' conflicting stories about the birthday party on April 21st. Remember, Mr. Depp experienced horrific financial news the evening of that night, April 21st, 2016. He learned that he was essentially out of money and he needed to start selling things. Well, we all know what Mr. Depp does when he receives bad news like that. He left the meeting at 9:30 and didn't arrive at Miss Heard's birthday party until 11:15. Okay, fine, he was late. But we all know what he does when he has that hour and 45 minutes of free time, and he's stressed out about something. Mr. Bett testified, remember he said, I took him to his home on Sweetser Avenue, his other home, to pick up
What
a
is this
birthday
laughing
present
strat? Just stop
from
that
Mr.
already.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
Just stop
Mr.
that.
Jenkins, you may remember him. He testified by the video link
Nobody
on the
likes
stand,
that.
and I said, you don't know what he did in that intervening time period. And he said, oh, yes, I do. I do. He said, Mr. Depp was visiting his sick mother. And I said, who told you that? And he said, Mr. Bett. The witnesses that Mr. Depp has paraded up here, who are here in person, they're here in person because they're on his payroll. Almost all of them. And they're telling you whatever they think they need to tell you to get you to take Mr. Depp's side. Just as we previewed they would do in the opening.
All 25 of them?
But Mr. Depp would go through periods where he would apologize, where he would be grateful. I have no doubt that there were times when Mr. Depp wanted to get better. These are texts, PX 120A and 120B. I won't read them all to you. These are texts that Mr. Depp sent to Paige Heard, Amber's mom, after detox on the island in 2014. He says, there were more than a few times when I thought it would be more simple to take that route. Meaning go for a swim and swallow a big drink of ocean. And he said it was Amber and Amber alone that got me through this. There is no luckier man on this earth to have the strength that Amber gives me and the full support of each of you. So as you're weighing the evidence and you're weighing Mr. Depp's credibility, think to yourself, what do I believe? What he has a motive to say on the stand, or what he wrote contemporaneously with the events? Take his own words to Amber after the detox. Just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. But then there were these days. Then there were times like this. This is sent on March 9th. We had a slightly grim morning, is the way Mr. Depp describes it. You'll remember the text from a few days later.
One good period in
Referred to as the disco
2014
bloodbath
equals
text.
win.
Where Miss Heard says, is that about last Friday night by any chance? And Mr. Depp responds, how can you make me smile about such a hideous moment? He testified on the stand, I don't remember what happened that Friday night, but Miss Heard sure did.
Oh yeah, so selective.
And this is one of the things that she had to show for it. Now, Ms. Vasquez showed this to you in opening statements and made it seem like, again, remember what I said at the
Just
beginning?
remember
if you take pictures,
what room the
they're
wine was
fake.
in.
If you didn't take pictures, it didn't happen. Here's one where she did take a picture, but Ms. Vasquez says, but she doesn't have injuries on her face. Look at the date that this picture was taken, ladies and gentlemen. March 23rd, 2013, 15 days after this incident. So even when there are pictures, they're trying to deceive you into thinking, oh, there should have been more. This is a 2-week-old bruise. And she texts it. Look who she texts that to.
Then why wait?
She texts it to her mom. They say
Then why wait then?
she never told anyone. Text to mom, March 23rd, 2013. Let's go to Hicksville. You remember Hicksville, obviously. There's been a little bit of discussion about that in this case. This is where Mr. Depp got jealous that a woman named Kelly Sue was sitting close to Miss Heard and maybe had her arm around her at a campfire. And everyone was having a good time. There were some mushrooms involved. There was some drinking. And Mr. Depp got jealous of that. Now, he claims that Miss Heard is the abuser, that she's so much stronger than he is. But then he testified that the evidence shows that in Hicksville, he was the one who said he was just trying to protect Amber. Well, who says, why would she need protection if she's the abuser? And he went and he took Kelly Sue's hand, forcibly removed it from Miss Heard, embarrassing Miss Heard, ruining the mood of the whole night. So they went and they got into an argument in the trailer, in which not only did he trash the trailer, but he took her into the bathroom. He slammed her up against the side wall of the bedroom by her neck, holds her there, that was the next one. In Hicksville, he took her into the bathroom of the trailer and did what he called a cavity search, where he inserted his fingers inside of her and sexually assaulted her, then trashed the trailer.
$63
And
for
you
a
heard
light fixture, by the way.
This Morgan Knight person who testified a few days ago, who said it was $62 of damage. You also heard evidence that the way he got involved in this trial was by reaching out to one of the main Johnny Depp fan influencers on social media. And you saw that text. That's how he injected himself into this trial.
Influencers!
There was way more than $62 of damage. You heard testimony from Rocky Pennington, Whitney Enriquez, and Amber about him trashing the trailer. And is that really a surprise? The man's admitted that he smashes things when he gets angry. The man's admitted that he smashed hotel rooms. You saw the quote that he admitted to the other day, that when he wants to hit something, he's going to hit it, and he doesn't care about the repercussions. So in Hicksville, Hicksville was late May 2013. This is a text, another text to drug buddy Bettany, where he says, I, of course, pounded and displayed ugly colors to Amber on recent journey. I am an insane person and not so fair-headed after too much of the drink. Weed, pills, fine. Booze, my capacity is too large and I won't stop. Ugly and sad. Oh, how I love it.
Good job, Lord, for keep going, though.
There appears to be an Amber Alert, but I think we're okay. People are getting it, I guess, on their phones that haven't silenced that.
Oh, okay, Your Honor.
Okay.
Can I keep going?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So that
sucks, though.
That's after Hicksville. This is what I was getting to next. Remember the testimony about Mr. Depp being drunk on his yacht on the island in the Bahamas in 2013, when Mr. Depp looked a little scary by the way his body fell into the water, and Lily Rose, his daughter, started to cry. Miss Heard comforted Lily Rose, and then Depp accused Amber of making them aware of this, that he was drinking again, making his kids aware of this. And he slammed her up against the side wall of the bedroom, held her up by her neck, held her there for a second, and said, I can fucking kill you, and you're an embarrassment. That's what he said. And then, do you remember what happened? Lily Rose and Amber helicoptered away from the island. And while Amber was in the helicopter with Lily Rose, Mr. Depp sends her this piece of poetry, calling her a lesbian camp counselor because she cared about his drinking, and just ridiculing her for trying to protect his daughter. Sickening. This text, let's fast forward a little bit to, actually before we talk about this is the Boston flight. Let's talk about the Moscow flight. The Moscow flight, when Mr. Depp and Amber, she said that was the one time she took ecstasy or MDMA with Mr. Depp, and she learned her lesson. When he hit her on the plane, when he threatened to break the flight attendant's wrist, and Miss Vasquez, again, just tried to tell you, oh, he always wore rings. Now, Miss Heard said almost all the time he did, or maybe sometimes when he didn't. And in the picture that she just showed you, PX 1248, you can take a look at that when you review the evidence. That's a picture taken in Moscow with no rings other than a wedding ring on his finger, or some kind of ring. He's wearing one ring on his finger. And so in Mr. Depp's world, they're going to try to come at you either way. They say, well, he was wearing rings, but it didn't leave a mark on your face. And then they show you a picture where he wasn't wearing rings during that trip. So that's what happened in Moscow. On 2013, in London, Mr. Depp
What? Oh no. Give me the Twitch link, give me the Twitch link. Or any other link?
Leave when he got spun up like that and she could see the monster coming. So let's fast forward to the Boston plane incident. Mr. Depp was jealous that she was filming a movie with James Franco. And Miss Heard testified that when she met him in Boston, she was on the plane, his car pulled up. She could guess by the way he was moving. She knew what was going to board that plane. And it wasn't Mr. Depp, the man. It was Mr. Depp, the monster. She said, I already know he's drunk. I already know he's using. And then when he got on the plane, he straight up started taunting her. He called her a go-getter and a slut. He started throwing things at her, ice cubes and utensils, and he slapped her face against the window when she was seated. And when she got up to move, how dare she, he kicked her in the back. She said, I feel this boot in my back. And he continued to drink and eventually started howling like an animal, passed out in the bathroom. Let's play 221, please. That's Mr. Depp on the plane, but he expects you to believe him that he didn't have anything to drink on that plane except for maybe one thing of champagne. That's what he expects you to believe. He's talked about blackouts. These blackouts where he doesn't remember what happened. He blamed them only on opiates, but we know they happened throughout, where he doesn't remember what's happened. As you're weighing the evidence, as you're assessing whether Mr. Depp has borne his burden of proof, think to yourself, do you believe Amber's account of what happened on the plane, or do you believe that person's account that you just heard? But actually, you can look at his account from a few days later, May 30th, in which he told, again, Paul Bettany, he said, drank all night before I picked Amber up to fly to LA. No food for days, powders, half a bottle of whiskey, 1,000 Red Bulls and vodkas, pills, 2 bottles of champagne, and what do you get? An angry aggro engine in a fucking blackout, screaming obscenities and insulting any fuck who got near. I'm done. I'm admittedly too fucked in the head to spray my rage at the one I love. For little reason as well. I'm too old to be that guy, but pills are fine. And he expects you to believe that he's carried his burden of proof in showing that no abuse happened on that plane. You don't have to look at just that. You can look at this text to Patty Smith when he says, when I was in NYC, they were brief visits, and I fucked in NYC. They were brief visits, and I fucked and charged by horrific fights with Amber. I fucked up and drank and got shitty. Was so disappointed in myself. You can look at his text to Miss Heard the next day, where he says, once again, I find myself in a place of shame and regret. Of course, I am sorry. I really don't know why or what happened. Well, no wonder. You heard the voice on the plane. Of course he doesn't know what happened. But I will never do it again. My illness somehow crept up and grabbed me. I must get better. I love you and feel so bad for letting you down. And what his response has been throughout this trial to things like that is blaming Amber, saying he's just placating her. Is that carrying his burden of proof and showing that abuse hasn't happened even a single time? This is in the lead up to Australia. But before we get there, we can talk about January 25th in Tokyo at the premiere of Mordecai, where he did slam her up against the hallway wall, wailed on her, and he did get on her back in the closet. And what do they say? Look at her backless dress. She doesn't have any bruises. She testified herself that she was checking out pictures because she was concerned that there were. So now their theory is if there's no marks, it didn't happen. We all know that's not the case. February 2015, this is when they got married. The day they got married, you heard the testimony from Io Tillett Wright, that where Mr. Depp told him, I can now punch her anytime I want and no one can do anything about it. He'll say it's a joke he made on his wedding day. Then we fast forward to Australia, where Miss Heard is flying from London, where she's filming The Danish Girl, to see her new husband for the first time since their wedding. And these are excerpts from DX353, all but the bottom right one are in the days leading up to this, where he's on a drug-fueled bender. He's hanging out with Marilyn Manson. He's getting drugs from his assistants who are enablers. Again, there's a reason you didn't hear them testify in this trial. They're getting him drugs for days and days. And then the one on the bottom right, you'll remember, you've seen a couple times, this is after he chopped his finger off, when he says, need more cocaine and ecstasy. So, and no one, Miss Heard's was in touch with his assistants, but no one told her the hornet's nest that she was walking into. And we all know what happened in Australia. We all know that Mr. Depp, she gets there, he pulls out a bag of MDMA, and he took a handful. She didn't say he took 10 at a time.
So no
she did say he
proof
took
doesn't
8
mean
to
that it
10
didn't
over
happen.
the course of that period. The second day,
So
Mr.
no proof
Depp
means that it did
claims
happen?
that Miss Heard refused to do a post-nup, calls Amber's domestic relations attorney, Michelle Mulrooney, you heard from her, when he was drunk, and he fired her. And he told Amber for about the 25th time, she said, the only way out of this is death. I don't want a post-nup. And then she said she remembered him slamming up against the wall. And I won't go through, you remember her testimony from Australia. You remember her saying that he had her by the neck, squeezing her neck. You remember her saying that he threw her on the games table like a ping pong table. You remember seeing the pictures of that broken table. You remember her saying that at some point he had a broken bottle up against her face, and he told her that he'd carve up her face, that he was throwing bottles at her. He's throwing bottles one after another, and I could feel glass breaking behind me, and you've seen the evidence of that. And he was just over and over again smashing the phone into the wall, screaming at me as she watched it break into pieces. Now, she doesn't know how he lost his finger. She said that she saw him smash a phone to pieces, and you heard him get impeached the other day with his testimony from the UK, which was different from what he testified here, where he said he did smash a phone. And then they tried to put that picture in front of you with a desk phone and suggest that that was it. It's deception. They're trying to deceive you. And then you heard Ms. Heard testify that the next morning she found meat that he had left all over the house. But not before what happened before she went to bed that night. Where Ms. Heard testified, and I remember trying to get up, and I was slipping on the glass. I was wanting to move. I felt this pressure in my pubic bone. I remember just not wanting to move because I didn't know if it was broken. I didn't know if the bottle that he had inside me was broken. This is the next morning. This is what he wrote with the bloody stump of his finger. And there's been testimony about what happened to cut the finger off, but frankly, it's irrelevant to your deliberations here. Amber could have chopped it off with an axe, and it has nothing to do with whether or not Mr. Depp abused her. But we all know she didn't. We all know that his fingers weren't curled, and someone was standing with a half-gallon vodka bottle from about where that canopy is, and threw it, and it somehow managed to damage just the bottom of the finger and leave the nail fully intact. We all know that didn't happen. Mr. Depp knows it didn't happen. We'll see some evidence of that. But here, he writes about her ambition, starring Billy Bob and Easy Amber, who talked about controlling, jealousy, talked about him not wanting her to act. Dawn Hughes testified how that is a form of intimate partner abuse. Here he's writing on the mirror again, and they try to blame her and say that she wrote Call Carly Simon. She didn't write that. Who was the lunatic?
The hand of writing matched.
Who was writing everywhere? There's no evidence she wrote that. She testified she doesn't even know who Carly Simon was until she was told. This is some of the evidence. Mr. Depp told you a couple different stories the other day about the evidence on the right. He claimed that that was the handle of vodka between those two beer cans there. But then under cross-examination, he admitted it's not, that there's not enough glass on the floor, that there's no handle of vodka on the floor. But what there is in the picture on the right is evidence of when he was throwing bottles past Amber's head and breaking that plate glass window. More writing, more abuse on the right. Imagining having a painting area where you're drawing two canvases and you and your husband get in a fight, and while you are asleep that night, he takes the bloody stump of his finger and dips it in paint and destroys your paintings. Ladies and gentlemen, that's abuse. Good luck and be careful at the top. And this is a good chance to talk about Mr. Depp's controlling and jealous rage and his desire to control Amber's career. He didn't want her to act. As early as 2013, he tells his sister, I don't need actress bullshit and her fucking ambition. He tells her in this recording,
if you look at the bigger picture,
I
what are the
become
things
irrational when you're doing movies. I become jealous and fucking crazy and weird. And, you know, we fight a lot more.
I become jealous when you're doing movies. I become irrational and fucking crazy and weird. Out of his own mouth. This is some of the notes of Dr. Blaustein, his therapist. Called himself
Maybe because she
destructive.
travels?
Something about wait up to fight the devil. Jealous.
What does that prove?
And I know this is hard to read, but you can see jealous, you can see paranoia, fear, envy. He wanted to control her. He wanted to own her. He didn't want her to have any career. And then he says things like, I have other uses for your throat, which do not include injury. No one who hasn't previously grabbed someone by the throat would write, which do not include injury.
What?
But we all know how Mr. Depp thinks along these lines, because you saw these two texts the other day that he sat on the stand and denied writing. And I'm not going to read them to you again.
What a
because
reach!
They're the most
What?
vulgar, vile writing you can imagine. He said, that's not my style. I wouldn't
My
write like
man
that."
needs to get some bitches. Should I say it?
Of course he would, and he did. These are texts that he produced, that he gave to Amber and our team in this litigation, from him to his personal assistant, Stephen Duders. This is the way he thinks about women. This, not what you heard on the stand, that. It's disgusting. He admitted that he cut his finger off. This is evidence of him admitting to it to people other than Amber. I cut the top of my middle finger off. Says that to Dr. Kipper. Says it again to Dr. Kipper. The bottom one he says to Nurse Velati. I just chopped my finger off. But he does say it to Amber too. Remember, we played this one 4 times, and Mr. Depp denied that he was actually saying the day that I chopped my finger off. Let's hear it one more time.
I don't know.
I'm talking about Australia, the day that
Now we're talking about Australia. Okay.
The day that I chopped my finger off. So let's fast forward to March 23rd, 2015. After just a few weeks in
That
Australia,
doesn't even match anybody's testimony,
Mr.
though.
Depp has a finger injury, no doubt about that. He comes home. He gets what they call a soft cast on it, which you heard his treating physician and our experts say it doesn't have sides on it, but it's a hard plaster cast. Over
He
the
didn't
top
admit
of
to
his
it.
finger that can be wielded
It's the way
like
he
a club.
worded it. If it were
And they got in an
true,
argument
she would have
when
said a
Miss
story
Heard
about
discovered
it.
that he was having an affair with a woman named Rochelle.
In order not to
had been
perjure
going on
herself
before the wedding
and lie
after
on the
wedding.
stand, she said she
And
didn't
she
know.
confronted him about that.
If she did know,
No
she
surprise
could have
there.
just
They
matched
got
the
in a huge
story.
argument. At some point in the argument, he bolted up the stairs. Now, Travis McGivern claims that she threw a Red Bull can at him. She and Whitney Henriquez say that absolutely didn't happen. But even if you believe Mr. McGivern, at some point, Mr. Depp went up the stairs. He went to the fight. This is the man that claims he always wants to run, and this time he had his bodyguard with him. So he could have just walked out the door, but he runs up the stairs, and Miss Henriquez is standing on the precipice of the stairs, and Amber admitted that when she thought he was about to push her down the stairs, as he's grabbing at her and Amber with his free hand and trying to club them with the casted hand, that she said,
Club them.
I punched him square in the face. I punched him square in the face. And they showed you a picture of the shiner that she had.
He probably worded it that way to avoid confrontation
That
of
Mr.
her
Depp
saying,
had.
you
Miss
made
Heard
me do
doesn't
this,
deny
and
that.
doing some circle.
They're trying to say she's the abuser for defending herself and her sister from this animal who's running at them. This person that they claim couldn't possibly have done this because he had a hurt finger. Yet he could have done this. This is what Mr. McGivern said was rearranging her closet. I don't know what you all do when you rearrange your closets, but I hope it doesn't look like this. This is throwing a clothing rack down the stairs. This is knocking this over. This is what he did to rearrange her closet with his hurt finger that he couldn't possibly have hit Miss Heard with, they claim. That in and of itself, that destruction of property, even if he hadn't hit her that night, that's abuse. Imagine being married to someone and walking on eggshells so thick that you don't know if you set them off if that's what's going to happen. That's abuse. And it's disgusting. But sometimes he would apologize. He'd say, I can't express how sorry I am for having stooped so low as to have spewed such vicious untruths for the sole purpose of hurting you. Grievous error, shameful. So he went in these cycles. She thought he could change for good. And when it was good, it was really good. But then sometimes things like December 15th came around, where she remembers him chasing her in the kitchen. She remembers him shoving her 2 or 3 times and sending her toppling over a Chase lounge and saying, "Do you really want to go again, tough guy?" And she looked at him and he balled up his fist, leaned back, and headbutted her square in the nose and pounded her head with the back of his fist so she couldn't breathe on that bed that we're going to see in a second, where she was suffocating in this pillow top, and she said, "This is when I thought I was going to die. He's going to kill me, and he doesn't even know what he's doing because he's out of his mind." And these are the pictures that they claim. I don't know what they're claiming. I don't know if they're claiming she painted on the bruise. Oh, you weren't hurt badly enough, so therefore you're making it up? Look under her eye.
Oh, I was muted. Her eyes
And
look
again,
worse in
their
court
theory
today
is
than on that picture.
All of this is a lie. All of this was some grand hoax. If this were a hoax, ladies and gentlemen, she'd have worse injuries than that. She'd really do it up. She took pictures as they existed when she could at the time of abuse. And yet Ms. Vasquez has the nerve to say, well, why didn't she videotape an incident of abuse? What, as she's being hit, she's supposed to somehow grab a video camera with one hand while she's defending herself with another hand? You heard her in one of the audio tapes talking about when she hit him as he was trying to barge at her and she got her feet caught under a door as he's coming after
She
her.
could literally have her phone recording audio at any given time if she was abused so
And
many
of
times
course,
over 5
as
years,
Don
6
Hughes
years.
testified to, victims, of course, of control like this,
She
they
could
do
have
try to
she could have audio
appease
recording
their
at
abusive
all times in
partner
her pocket.
and apologize for things that aren't their fault. So as you're coming at me, Johnny, and you push a door into me, and I have to hit you to get away, to protect myself, yeah, she did apologize for that because that's the cycle of violence. That's what victims do. Yet they continue to blame the victim. There's no evidence she painted on that bloody lip. And again, if we're talking about a hoax, the next day she went on James Corden and they say, well, you can't see any injury there, so it must not have been. She would have to be the dumbest person in the world to say, I'm going to commit an abuse hoax, but let's do it the day before I go on national television.
That just looks fake. I'm gonna be honest, Chad.
Let's do it
Guys,
the day before.
guys, out of all pictures that
But you heard
I didn't think
Melanie
were fake.
Iglesias, her makeup
If
artist,
one looks fake, I think
testify
that one
in
looks fake.
Great detail, and I didn't even understand.
red
half
looks
terms
so
about
weird
makeup
there.
that she was using, but she testified in great detail about exactly what she did to cover up those bruises. The red lipstick.
The
that she
red is
put
so
to cover
bright, it
up
has
the
like
busted lip.
no shadow or whatever. It's just weird.
You heard the testimony of that from a neutral party who said exactly what she did. She talked about how she looked at the color wheel to neutralize the bruising. They claim it was just an accidental headbutt. Well, no accidental headbutt rips out hair. They claim, oh, Miss Heard somehow used a pocket knife to cut this portion of the bed out to stage this. Well, I don't know if that's a pocket knife or not, but the only testimony in this trial about a pocket knife is Whitney Henriquez saying that Mr. Depp carried a pocket knife in his pocket every day.
So she took
We
it
don't
out.
know where that, if it is a pocket knife, where that came from.
But that doesn't match the story then.
I think one of the most telling
Wait,
things about this
what?
incident is the text he sent to David Heard, Amber's dad, 2 weeks later, where he says, I meant to send this to you a week or so ago. I'm sending it to you now. And he says, I forget if it's a text or an email, but you can look at the X580. He says, yes, I fucked up and went too far in our fight. Because as a result of that fight and the bruises that all of her family saw, the family refused to go to the Bahamas with them for Christmas. The family refused to go to the Bahamas for Christmas, and on that trip to the island, Mr. Depp kept passing out, and every time he passed out, he would dump a glass of wine on Amber's lap. And she didn't like that, and she yelled at him. And because it was in front of his kids, he got up. This is the one where Tara Roberts took the video, but she didn't show you the closet, she didn't show you the bathroom. And Amber says, while holding my neck, this is in the closet, he said, I'll fucking kill you if you ever speak to me like that in front of my kids again because you embarrass me. And then he took her into the bathroom, and she said, but this time, he grabbed my vagina, shoved his fingers inside me, but through my bathing suit, and held me there and asked me if I was so fucking tough. And then she ran out of the house. And to keep him away from her, that's when he claims, and she admits she threw something at him. She didn't know what it was. It's been testimony it was a can of mineral spirits that she claimed that hit Mr. Depp. And Mr. Depp is somehow the victim in that encounter? Come on. We talk about the train ride to Asia. You saw the pictures taken before they got on the train ride where Mr. Depp has the same shadowing under his eye that he does in the allegedly abusive picture. But in that picture, he held in that train ride, talk about a honeymoon, he held her up against the wall while she was trying to get his arms off her neck, and he was squeezing her neck against the railway car, and at some point, I pulled the lapel of his shirt, he rips the shirt off, and she woke up with the shirt around her neck and a giant knot in the back of her head. Let's fast forward to her birthday party just very quickly. He experienced terrible financial news that night. He came over, they got into a fight. There's been conflicting evidence about that. But Amber said, I hit the side of the desk, he chest bumped me, he fell to the floor, I fell to the floor, and when I got back up, he held me down by the shoulders, and that's when he grabbed her by the pubic bone and pushed her down. And you'll remember Ms. Vasquez showing her interrogatory answers where she details a lot of this and saying, nowhere in there does it say that. And Ms. Hurd says, it actually does on page 64, and pointed out to Ms. Vasquez exactly where it says that. That's abuse. It's sexual abuse.
Ha! It was on page 16.
What Mr. Depp does when he experiences terrible financial news, or terrible news. He experienced terrible news that night on the way to the birthday party where both of his bodyguards have testified that he was either visiting his sick mom or getting a birthday present for Amber. Jesus Christ. And then we know what happens the day after his mother passed away on May 21st, 2016. And we're going to skip through a little bit of this now, and Elaine will talk about this in the context of the counterclaim, but these are the pictures afterwards. These are pictures that now they're claiming that, they must have been faked. There's been no testimony in this case that these pictures were faked. There's been no testimony that the marks you see on Amber's face, including this mark with a straight line from below her eye to the top of her temple that it lines up directly with a phone. There's been no testimony that those are faked. Mr. Depp went through the house. He destroyed pictures of her friends.
Wait,
that's
what?
abuse. Property destruction like that, in and of itself, is abuse. He destroyed her office. He destroyed her friend Rocky Pennington's preparation for the bead show that she was having.
Oh yeah, let's ask Amber
He spilled
what
wine in
room
the
what
hallway,
room that
and
is.
You'll notice the police deny.
Hey, Amber,
oh,
what
there
room-
was no spilled wine
what
in the
room is that?
hallway. Well, even Isaac Baruch testified that he saw
She
this
remembers
in
when
the
it's her
hallway.
time to talk, when it's
And
their time
they
she
said she never
forgets.
sent anything to her medical providers. These are the texts that she sent to her nurse, Erin Filati, the night that it happened. These are pictures of her in the courtroom. We're not going to play this right now, but you can listen to this. This is that terribly disturbing text of him in July of 2016 threatening to cut himself and telling, you cut me or I will. You all remember playing that. It was awful. It was awful. I'm not going to play it again.